Hey everybody, we are live. Today we are doing the live show discussion of The Toll by Neil Shusterman, which hopefully everyone has had time to read. We stretched this out to 2 months this time since it's the holiday season, and I wanted everyone to be able to participate that wanted to. So you'll notice Sarah is not here with us today because she did not read the book. She didn't have time with finals and stuff going on. So I thought I would start this a little bit early just to give people time to come in and hang out. And I'm going to try to get this set up so that I can see comments on the computer. Let me go here and open that up. No, that's gonna, hold on. How do I fix this? I want to turn off my sound, I think. Yes, okay. I don't know. We'll see what happens. I'll figure this out. Okay. Oh, hey, Shannon. Oh, somebody's here. Yay. I've been nervous that like everyone's busy. It's the holiday season. So. Oh yeah, definitely come back if you haven't read the book yet. If you haven't had time to finish, I totally get it. I know this is like a crazy time of year, but yeah, this video will be here forever. So you'll be able to come back and watch and leave comments on it later. But I'm just super excited to talk about the series as a whole and The Toll specifically. I've just been, I have so many things and thoughts, and I'm reading it aloud right now with my twins, but we have not finished. We're like, I don't know, I have that bookmark and I think we're like almost 2/3 of the way. We just did not get it done this week like I wanted to. So hopefully, we'll finish it by the end of the year, but yeah, we've been having a lot of fun reading it together so that I could talk it out as we go, because I just need people to talk to. And yeah, I'm just so excited to have people to unleash my thoughts upon. So while we're still waiting, we can do sort of like an overview discussion of the first two books as well, because I read all three like back to back. So like in anticipation of The Toll coming out, because I wanted everything to be fresh in my memory. So we could discuss all of the things about Arrrgh of the Scythe. Oh my gosh, Jill Jones, you just finished reading it 5 minutes ago. Awesome. But like, way to go. All of your thoughts are going to be really fresh. I can't wait to hear what you thought of the book. I thought the series as a whole was like perfection. This is maybe one of those perfect trilogies where everything just works really well. And there weren't really anything in the series at all that I felt like should have been done differently. I feel like everything flowed really well through the books. And I just think it's one of those series that is potentially one of the best trilogies I've ever read after like Lord of the Rings. And so I just think it's such an intriguing premise, and the way that Neil Shusterman like plays with these ideas is just, it fascinates me to no end. I just think it's so interesting, and I wish my brain worked that way that I could create something like that, because it's fascinating the way that The Toll and just the way the story as a whole worked, and the way The Toll wrapped everything up so neatly and so well. I'm fascinated. And I have a whole bunch of notes that I wrote down. I have my notebook. I didn't write them as I was reading. I wish I had. But I have a bunch of notes that I made like over the last few days of things that I really wanted to talk about, or things that I didn't want to forget. But hopefully I don't forget anything major. Most of the book is pretty fresh in my mind because we've been reading it aloud. Like today we were reading it, and so I'm hoping I didn't forget anything important from the end. Shannon, I have not read all of his series that I own, but I would say this is probably the only one that I've read all the way through and finished. I'm almost done with Unwind. I think I have 1.5 books to go, because I got halfway through Unbound, I think is the third one. Maybe it's not. I don't know. But I think I want to say that I think that the Unwind series is like a prequel to the Arrrgh of the Scythe. because there are things that happen in the Arc of the Scythe, specifically in Thunderhead, that I was like, huh, that sounds like Unwind stuff. Like the way Goddard gets his head attached to Tiger's body. That sounds like something that came from Unwind. So my thinking is that we don't know how far in the future any of this is happening. And I think Unwind stuff happened at like towards the end of the Mortal Age. And then we get the Scythe stuff picking up like 200 years later. So I feel like that's a thing though. I don't know. It's never been confirmed by the author, but I feel like that's a thing. Like they're the same universe. Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. I feel like that is definitely like, I don't know if he intended it to be that way, but I feel like it came from that. So especially just the things that happen with Goddard's body and that sort of stuff. And the nods to like wars and terrible things happening. And that makes me think of the Heartland War and just the idea of unwinding in general, I think would disturb the Thunderhead. So I don't know. I feel like that's definitely a thing. So I don't know. Do we want to discuss the books as a whole, or do we want to just focus on the Toll? Because most of the notes I wrote down are the Toll stuff. But I don't know. Let's just ramble. Let's ramble. Oh, what? Okay, hold on. Okay, Jill says the ending of the Toll felt a bit rushed, but still good. Everybody loading up on spaceships felt unrealistic, but I just kept rolling with it because everything tied up so perfectly and symbolically. I don't know. I kind of went with it. I believed that made sense. I feel like the author set it up. Like he talks about it in Scythe, I think, where we know that there had been attempts to colonize off planet, but that something always went wrong. And I feel like it would be logical that once the Thunderhead realized it could work around the Scythes, that it would want to naturally go do that again, because that is the best way to fix the population problem and eliminate the need for the Scythes entirely. If you could somehow get everyone off, or not everyone, but get a good enough portion of the planet off into other planets to inhabit. So I really liked that. And I liked how it talked about the odds and like how long it was going to take. And I just thought that all worked really well with the whole of the story. So yeah, I don't know. That all worked for me. Hi, Patty. Oh, I'm glad you finished it in time. Yeah, I didn't know how many people were going to try to binge it like right before, but yeah, I'm so glad that people were able to read it in time, because I don't know how many people had to start with Scythe and read all three. But actually, I think that's the best way to read this, really, is to just binge the whole thing in one go, because everything's fresh in your mind, so you remember things happening. And so, okay, let's just kind of like roll through the story. Most of my notes are kind of in order. So Grayson being the Toll was not surprising. I kind of had predicted that. I don't know. I just felt like at the end of Thunderhead, when the Thunderhead was like, we need to talk, and the idea of him being the only one not unsavory, it just made sense that the Toll was going to be Grayson Tolliver. So I really liked that. I liked that after having to live as an unsavory unwillingly, like he didn't want to be, that now he gets to be the only one who isn't unsavory. And that just made me feel like happy for him, weirdly, even though I know that being thrust into that situation was not what he wanted necessarily. But I think it worked really well with the story. I like Grayson as a character and how interesting he is, and how much he like tried to embrace whatever thing he had to do. And he was the perfect choice because he didn't want to be it. I mean, if you had like Mendoza become the Toll, I think he would have totally become another Goddard and become power hungry and all of that. So I think Grayson is the perfect person to be in a situation where he has that much power and that much control and sway over people without actually needing them to fall in line with him. But yeah, I love Grayson and how interesting he is, and how he takes on what he's been given, and really puts himself into the position that he has to. And Faraday. Let's talk about Faraday and the Land of Nod. Okay, there's so much to unpack here, but I was just completely fascinated at the idea that not only was there a failsafe, but they had created the Tonist religion in order to create a way for them to find the failsafe. Like the fact that the Sides invented a religion that is completely nonsensical, but that would somehow work in a way to get people to find the failsafe and then use it. I don't know. That kind of blew my mind a little bit. Just the way the story even plays with the ideas of how religion works, and how the Thunderhead itself is almost God, or could be a god. Like, it doesn't want to be worshipped, but you could easily see how you could leap to worshiping it. And I don't know, I just think that was really interesting. And the fact that the Land of Nod was hidden from the Thunderhead, because if the Thunderhead knew about it, I'm wondering if they hid it from the Thunderhead specifically because they didn't want any information in the back brain. Because if there was a way for someone to find it, then maybe other sides would destroy it. I don't know. I was trying to figure out what that was and why it would do that. But that is the only thing that makes sense to me, is that maybe the sides didn't want the Thunderhead to find it, because it would lead to its destruction, perhaps. I don't know. But the whole idea of the Nod poem and the Tonist religion, and it was the what is it called? The fork thing. I don't know. I just thought that was really interestingly put together. But let's see, what else did I write down? So let's see. Oops, what did I just do? Oh, Jill says Faraday's ending made me so happy for him. All of Schusterman's world building of the tone, the scythe rings, the failsafe, the toll was so perfect. It was. It really, I don't know. I don't know how people's brains work that way. I wish I could create scenarios like that. But yes, I think that the failsafe too was just such a well thought out plan, that I liked how the sides became not necessarily heroes, but beloved at the end, because those that chose to continue, now that they bring peace to people instead of like being scary. I don't know. I loved seeing Faraday's arc, because he went like so many different places in this book. He was depressed and so sad at the beginning. I felt so bad for him, and poor Munira having to try to like bring him out of it, and knowing that she might not be able to bring him out of it. But seeing him go from grieving to joy, and then seeing him embrace his new role as a scythe who brings peace at the end, I loved that. I just thought it was such a great arc for him. I just love Faraday. He's one of my favorite characters in the books, and I thought that was a really good end for him. But yeah, I hated seeing how sad he was, and his hearing about what happened on Endura secondhand, and his reaction to it was just so sad. Okay, what about Loriana? We could talk a little bit about Loriana. There was a lot of new characters. There were so many new characters in this book, and I tried to make notes on everybody I could, but I wanted to talk about Jericho, because I thought Jericho was a really interesting character. And I wanted to talk about Loriana, because I feel like the two of them played the biggest roles of the new characters we were introduced to. I really liked seeing Jericho as a character and hearing about what life is like in Madagascar. And I liked the idea of all the different charter regions too. I found that really interesting, seeing how the Thunderhead like plays around with these different ideas and experiments to see what works and what doesn't. And that that was just really interesting. Oh, Shannon, you spelled Jericho right, I think. I think it was it with an H or was it without an H? I don't know. I can't remember. Same difference. But I thought Jericho was an interesting character, and that was an interesting perspective to have. And let's see. And Loriana too was really interesting to see how somebody who went from having this like lofty goal and then having it taken away from them and then having to start over again. I thought that was a really interesting thing to see. Ah, Jill, yes. Wondered what Schusterman's writing desk must look like with tons of crazy planning and sticky notes everywhere. Yes, I wonder that too, because to keep all of this stuff in order in your mind, I don't know. He must have like the most extensive bulletin boards full of notes. I can't even imagine. Oh, yes. I do wish Scythe Carey could have somehow survived. I agree, Patty. That would have been amazing to have somehow found a way, but I knew that she was definitely dead. And I had harbored maybe a small hope that she could somehow come back, but I guess when you get killed and then you get drowned and, eaten by sea life, I guess there's no coming back from that. But if only. Um, but Loriana, back to Loriana, being the only one that knew what was going to be built on the islands and having to deal with that information. I don't know. I don't know if I could have kept that a secret. I feel like I probably would have told somebody. and I would have told them like in confidence, like, hey, don't tell anybody, but this is what's happening. And yeah, I don't know if I could have kept something like that a secret. But I loved the idea that the Thunderhead was like, you know what, we're gonna do this again anyway. Like I now know where the blind spot is. I know what's on the blind spot. I wonder if it knew though. I wonder if it understood what was in the blind spot. It must have understood that the sides were the ones preventing all the off-world excursions from working. And so it must have just like been like, to heck with it. We're gonna do this and we're gonna make it work. But I loved seeing like the plan unfolding. I did not predict at all that that's where the story was going. I kept trying to figure it out, but I like halfway through the book, I was like, I give up. I don't know what we're doing. We're just gonna go with it. But I loved that that's where it went. Okay, let's talk for a second about the iterations because it took me forever to understand what was happening there. I did not get it, and I think it was probably 3/4 of the way through the book, like right before the reveal of it, that I figured it out. But the first couple of iterations I found super confusing. I did not know who was talking or who they were talking to, and it didn't make sense to my brain. But yeah, then going back and rereading them again, especially reading them aloud with my kids, I was like, oh my God, it makes so much sense now. Like seeing the Thunderhead trying to recreate itself, but not, because it needed to have like a better version, not necessarily a better version, a version that could go around the Scythe rules. Yes, it was like Gollum and Smeagol. And I just think it's fascinating now, now knowing what it is now, because yeah, the first time through I didn't get it, and I kept going, what is this? Who is it talking to? But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and seeing like the different versions of it that were more power hungry or that just didn't care about humanity. And I thought that was really interesting, and the way it explored the way other AI might be more dangerous. So I think that's interesting. Ooh, yeah, it is kind of like a clone. It is like kind of creating a clone of itself, I guess, but like an improved clone. And I thought that was interesting. Um, let's see, what else did I write down? Okay. So then I wrote down stuff about Testament of the Toll. I almost like wanted to skim and skip those parts, the Testament of the Toll, and then the stuff with the different like symposium or something, trying to like comprehend. It was basically like Bible and Bible commentary. And I thought it was boring at first, but then I went back and I was reading it again. And now it makes sense to me now. But I like the idea that we don't know how far into the future that stuff is written. And it's clearly written in the future, like well after the fact, because some of the stuff it talks about would make it seem like it's got to be at least 100 years or more into the future where people no longer remember clearly what had been happening, because it talks about like scythes being like mystical beings that maybe didn't even exist and stuff like that. And it made me think about the way that people use the Bible and the way the Bible is written and stuff. Like, I just thought it was really interesting to see how religions are created and how they come to be portrayed later on, well after the events that they're talking about have been played out. Because the stuff that's talked about in the Testament of the Toll is like a crazy version of the actual events that play out. Like, we know, like, for example, when it talks about him shape-shifting into some kind of bird, we know that that's actually when we see the Toll, when we see Grayson bringing the birds to him to like make them understand. I thought it was so interesting. And yes, Shannon, I love the way Schusterman uses commentary on what's happening now in his stories. And it just gets you to think about it in a different way. And I love that. I just thought it was really an interesting look at the way religions are created and how they devolve and how they like and I guess you could say that Grayson Tolliver is basically Jesus in this book. And the Thunderhead would be God, because Grayson can talk to the Thunderhead and the Thunderhead can talk to Grayson. And I just thought it was really interesting. And yes, and how there's always people who take their religion too far, and you have all these sibilants and who are basically religious zealots who are just using violence to make their point, or doing crazy things like cutting out their tongues or blinding themselves in the name of their faith. And I just thought that was all really, really interesting. I loved that the Tonists took like an interesting place in the story, because in the other books, the Tonists are sort of like, they're in their own little world, and you hear about them on the side, and they seem pretty harmless, and their beliefs are really bizarre, but that all comes to a head in the Toll. And I just thought that was all really neat and so thought-provoking. And also Goddard, let's talk about Goddard for a second. Like, I thought maybe the worst villain I'd ever read in a book was Umbridge from Harry Potter, but now I'm gonna have to give it to Goddard, because I can't think of a worse, like, disgusting villain. Like, I hate him so much that he gives me such visceral reactions. Oh God, yeah, I wanted to hit him so much. Like, he's so frustrating. And like the parallels you can see quite plainly to Hitler, the way that like he was redefining what bias means, and making it just enough of a change in the word to give him permission to start gleaning people in groups that nobody would have ever agreed with before, because clearly that's wrong. But by changing it just a little bit, ugh. Jill, you pictured Goddard looking like Euron Greyjoy. You know, that's hilarious. I didn't think of that, but yeah, that makes sense, because he was awful too. That's a good comparison. But yeah, the way that he was redefining the words just so he could kill the undesirable people and make a better population. And he was so terrible. And his comment too about only idiots build walls, we just glean them instead. I strongly dislike him so much. So yeah. He was pretty awful and pretty despicable. And his relationship with Anne, too, was really interesting. Oh, the scene in the arena was just, we just read that like 2 days ago, I think. And my twins were like, what? Of course, he would do something so drastic and so just hot headed and spontaneous, and Anne trying to talk him down by saying, let's use the situation to our advantage, and him taking that the extreme other way than what she meant. And I just, oh my gosh. And the fact that all the other sides went along with it, like, I found that more disturbing, I think, than him even saying it out loud. The way that so many of them, just in their need to keep their power and be on the right side and be in power, that they were willing to go and start murdering thousands of people just because he said to, for no other reason. Like, they didn't have to. They could have said no. They could have taken him down right there. There's what didn't it say there was like 1,000 sides in attendance? Like 1,000 sides could have stopped him. But the fact that they didn't want to lose their power, and that they would just go along with it, I found that to be really disturbing, but also very realistic. But Ayn Rand too. And can I just say that now I can never see that name without thinking of these characters? Like, I can't see the name Ayn Rand without thinking of the character from the Ark of the Scythe. I saw a book in a bookstore the other day by Ayn Rand, and I was like, huh, no, not that Anne. but her relationship with Goddard in the course of the books, I thought was really interesting, because she's clearly one of those people that is attracted to power. And she's also sort of a spontaneous person like Goddard was. He became more so, I think, once he had Tiger's body. But she was very much attracted to that. And I don't know that she was ever necessarily an evil person. She definitely made bad choices. But I think she got in over her head and didn't know how to step away from it, and got swept up into it. And she tried. You could see her trying to like correct him and convince him to change, but it was too late at that point. And so she was just there and trying her best, but I felt so bad for her. And which is weird, because I did not like her at all in the other two books. She was never as bad as Goddard, but she was still pretty awful. But seeing her struggle with what she'd done and the choices that she made, like that first section where she went to go see Tiger, I had to set the book down a second and go, wait, why do I feel sad now? Like, I didn't expect that. It was very, like, not what I expected from her. And so her relationship with Goddard throughout the book, I thought was done really well. You could definitely see her regret, and like, she still wasn't necessarily good, but she's definitely not as wrong as he was. And let's see. Oh, Scythe Jim Morrison. I really, really like all of the stuff with him. I don't know. It was so funny. Like, I remember in Thunderhead when we were reading about all the different sides and talking together at the conclave, and there was a Scythe Beyonce, which my kids thought was hilarious. And so they kept trying to come up with other goofy Scythe names. And like my son Riley was like, it was totally a missed opportunity that there wasn't a Scythe Schusterman. But I really loved the idea of this Scythe who is like this cool guy, and he's really handsome, and he dresses all in denim, and he's his patron is freaking Jim Morrison of all people. And I loved that. And seeing his character, this guy that is just, he likes the idea of being in power, but he doesn't want to have to do anything. Like, he's super lazy and chill, and he just wants to be like interesting and cool, but like not actually have to do anything. I don't know. He was just, it cracked me up how funny that was. And seeing his arc and how he was so like willing to just sure, why not? I'll be your bodyguard and help out Grayson. I don't know. I just really liked that. I thought he was an interesting character. And honestly, the whole time I pictured him as Billy from Stranger Things. Like, if they make this into a movie, and I'm sure they will, if they don't cast Dacre Montgomery as Scythe Morrison, I don't even know, because he just embodied Billy to me. I just thought that would be the perfect guy to play him. And because he's really handsome, but he's also kind of obnoxious to, like, you don't like him, but he's pretty to look at. And that's exactly what I think Scythe Morrison is. Like, you don't necessarily like him, but you like watching him, and he's really interesting, and the way he acts. I just think Dacre Montgomery has to play him. So, Neil Schusterman, if you're listening, that should be what you do for the casting. But I really liked seeing his arc, though, and how you could see he was terrified at the end, getting on one of the spaceships and not knowing what was going to happen. Because I feel like he's one of those people that doesn't like to take big risks, and that was a freaking huge risk to take. And yeah, I just like that so much. And seeing him take on the role of bodyguard to the Toll, which is hilarious because the sides don't like him. Shannon says, has there been any talk of them making a series or a movie? I want to say that I read somewhere that it was optioned. That does not mean that it's actually going to happen. But I want to say there's supposed to be a TV series of the Unwind series, and that Arc of the Scythe got optioned. I really hope. Didn't I see it here? Did I read it in the book? Is that what I saw? I saw it somewhere. Let me look. Let me check. I might be hallucinating that. No, I don't know. No, I can't find it. But I swear I saw it somewhere. Yes, it is. It's right here. The entire Arc of the Scythe series continues to be in development as a feature film with Universal. So it's in the book. If you look at the beginning, it's in the acknowledgments at the very beginning. It does say that it's optioned. It's going to be a movie. I don't know. I imagine it's going to be 3 movies, 1 for each book. Probably 4 movies, because I'm sure they're going to split the toll, because that's the thing that they do. But I don't know when that's going to happen. It's just a thing I read. So I hope. I feel like it's very cinematic. Like, I could see it as a movie playing, and I think it would work really well as a movie series, and I think it would do really well. I think it would be as big as the Hunger Games, honestly. And if they play it right, it would be amazing. Like, I'm already like fan casting. Like I said, I've got Dacre Montgomery lined up for Scythe Jim Morrison. But I would love to do like a whole fan cast video. Maybe I'll do that sometime. And who do I think should play each part? I don't know. I have a hard time picturing some characters. Like, I don't know what Citra actually looks like, because I can't visualize her. But I know what I want Rowan to look like, and I can see Grayson. So I don't know. I might have to come up with some like fan cast ideas. Ooh, yeah. Who should play Faraday? I don't know. That would be, I'm going to have to sit down and think about that. I would love to do a fan cast. That would be really fun. Of course, now I'm sitting here trying to think of actors who are like older gentlemen, because like, that would be Faraday, but I can't think of anybody off the top of my head. I don't know. You know who would be great, though? And I bet that he wouldn't get cast, but I would love to see like Anthony Stewart Head as Faraday. I think that would work. Like the whole Watcher vibe he had in Buffy. I don't know. I could see it. I could see that working. And he's older now. And I picture Faraday as being like in his 50s. And yeah, I don't know. I think that could work. Let's see. Let's talk about Anastasia's discoveries in the back brain, and what Scythe Tenkamenon and his undersides were trying to get her to find. I thought the way they went about that was really interesting, because somebody could tell you information and you might believe them, but it would be really easy to like just go, oh, you're just jealous or whatever. But to have Anastasia sit there and say, okay, this is what you need to look for, and go in the back brain, look it up yourself, and see if you can find anything that you think is off or different or wrong. And then like having her release the information that way was really smart. And I thought it was really interesting because you know that off-planet stuff has not worked in the past, and the way that she went about, and it never even occurred to me. I think when I read that, I think it's in Scythe that they talk about that, and I think it's mentioned again too in Thunderhead. But it just, I figured, oh well, yeah, that space is just dangerous. It's dangerous and it's far, and of course that would be impossible to pull off. So sure, that's why it didn't work. It never even occurred to me that it would be Sides doing it. But of course, they don't want to lose their power and their position, so they would orchestrate these elaborate disasters and then hide it because the Thunderhead can't do anything about it. It's Scythe affair. It's Scythe business. So the way she unraveled that was really interesting, and I don't know, I believed it completely. I was like, oh wow, that's crazy that that would happen, but of course it would. It totally made sense. I love that like the Thunderhead really wanted to do things. Like it wanted to stop what was happening. And I think my favorite thing with that was when Scythe Morrison is trying to assassinate Grayson, and the Thunderhead keeps telling him, he's like, you should go on a trip right now, like today. You should go on a trip. And he's like, I don't want to go on a trip. We just got back. And the Thunderhead's like trying to drop hints, but it can't tell him why. And like making the water too hot in the bath, like you're in hot water, there's danger. And I loved that. I loved seeing the relationship with Grayson and the Thunderhead, because it really was just the most emotional I ever felt about artificial intelligence, I think. And I just love their interaction so much. And the way that like the Thunderhead would watch him sleep. Like it was watching him sleep because it loved him and it wanted so badly to be able to hold him. And I felt so many emotions at that. And I just thought it was so, wow, okay. It has emotions, it has feelings. Like that's wild. And when it took Jericho's body so that it could feel humanity and use that to make the Cirrus better. Like that was the key it was missing. And the way Grayson reacted to that, and oh my goodness, the idea of Grayson kind of breaking up with the Thunderhead and saying it marked him as unsavory, I don't know, that was just, I had a lot of feelings. And it gave me emotions, and the fact that it just wanted to touch him, like it needed to be in the body of Jericho so that the Thunderhead could touch him, just touch his face and feel it. And that was the epitome of its happiness. I don't know, I had a lot of emotions about that. Ooh, yes, Leslie says, I always wondered throughout the book if the Thunderhead's desire to do more and find workaround would end up corrupting the Thunderhead. I did too. I think halfway through this book, I gave up on the idea that was ever going to happen, because it definitely didn't seem like it was corruptible, which I thought was really interesting, because usually when we think about artificial intelligence, we think of like the Terminator series and them coming to like power and taking over and being dangerous. And I really loved that the way Neil Shusterman wrote this, that the Thunderhead was almost incorruptible. It would not break its own rules no matter what. And I just thought that was really interesting. That was an interesting way to play it. And I saw him talk in an interview too, that like he talked about how not just that the Thunderhead was like an incorruptible intelligence, he wanted to create a world where everything was right. We fixed it. We've corrected all the problems. Everything's good now. And what would that look like? And that he talked about too, that he thought that the Sides were like the Jedi, who would be the ones that would be in charge of keeping the population under control. It would be the Jedi. And that's where he got the idea for the Sides, that they were modeled off of the Jedi. I thought that was really interesting, and that obviously Jedi are corruptible. And yeah, I thought seeing how corruptible they were was really interesting, because they're meant to be so honorable and good. And that is why they have this power, because they are honorable and good. And seeing Rowan's journey too throughout the story, and how he was so desperate to do the right thing and always picking the wrong way to go about it. I loved seeing his arc throughout the whole series, because he was chosen because he had so much like need to do right. He wanted so badly to do the right thing and to be a good scythe and to find a way to do that. And for him to decide that the best way for him to use his power is to kill all the bad scythes. And then seeing when the Texans rescue him, that they give him a list of scythes, and they're like, okay, well, here's the bad scythes we want you to kill. And he's like, well, what makes them bad? Oh, well, they don't agree with us. And so that's not what that means. And I loved seeing his like need to do the right thing almost made him almost indifferent to everything else. And like, he wouldn't play their games at all. He would not give in. He wouldn't grovel. He wouldn't try to convince them of his way of doing things. He was just like, no, you're wrong. I can't help you. And he wouldn't even like defend himself. He didn't even try to defend himself, because there's no way he could have. It really bothered me that everyone was so quick to agree with Goddard, that obviously he was the one that destroyed Endura, that people would even believe that Rowan would have the capability of sinking an entire island. And they bought it so quickly. Even Pasuelo, when we meet Scythe Pasuelo at the beginning of the book, he's like, oh, well, Rowan is the one that sunk Endura. And Citra's like, what? No, he's not. Of course he couldn't have done that. Like, it doesn't even make sense. But people were so willing to believe Goddard. I don't even understand that. I tried to like put myself into like being a person in this world, and I'm just like, no, that doesn't make sense. Like, how would he have done that? They turned him into this boogeyman, and everyone was just so willing to believe it. I found that kind of strange, but also fascinating. Like, I don't know, maybe I would have believed it if I lived in that world. Another thing I thought was interesting too about that is the way that people reacted to the scythedom, and the way that ordinary people didn't even seem to know any of the stuff that was going on with the scythedom at all. Like, they might have noticed there were more mass gleanings and therefore made their lives smaller, but they still just kind of went, well, it's not me, so who cares? Like, it doesn't affect me, so I'll ignore it. And I think that's just so normal. That's such a good way of showing like how people think. Like, it's so easy to just go, well, that doesn't concern me, so why do I need to worry about it? I'll just stay home and not worry about going anywhere in public in large groups. And it just made people's lives shrink, but they still didn't even seem phased. Like, ordinary people would just kind of gone about their day, and sure, we might accidentally end up in a place where a mass gleaning could occur. So I don't know, it was interesting to me to see how ordinary people's lives were affected by the scythedom. Oh yeah, Brian says, I was impressed at the beginning of Scythe at how he wanted to be there for the other student getting gleaned. That really did sum up his character, yeah. He just really wanted to do the right thing at all times. And that's why he would make such a good scythe. It kind of bummed me out that he didn't get to be a official scythe, because he would have been so good at it, just like Citra was. Let's see, what else did I have written down? I think I've talked about everything. But yeah, the fail-safe, we didn't really talk too much about that. The fail-safe being just that all the rings would explode, all the little diamonds would burst, and that there was that weird black that they always talked about. There was a flaw in the stones. There's just flaws in the diamonds, but that the flaw was the fail-safe. I just did not see that coming. I thought it was really interesting and really well done that it had been there the whole time, but nobody knew. And I thought it was interesting too that they've mentioned several times in the books that no one really knew how the rings worked. They didn't know how this technology was created, and they didn't know what it was. They just knew that it worked, and so they used it. And how easy is it for us, even today, to forget how things work and just accept that it does. And then what happens when it doesn't work anymore? Like, you can't recreate it. You can't make them again because you don't know how it was made. And so the fact that the failsafe was always there, lurking, ready to be used, that fascinated me. I thought that was really well done. And that the failsafe was basically the stuff was released and now people die of disease again. And like every 100 years or something, they would be able to, like, 5% of the population dies, 10% of the population dies. I can't remember off the top of my head now. But I just thought that was so interesting and such a smart way to play it. So now we don't need scythes anymore because people will die naturally in cycles, and you can send population groups off to space because I have to assume at least some of those colonies are going to be successful. And I just thought it was fascinating, the idea of colonizing these new planets and having Cirrus be their new thunderhead on each planet. And I want there to be a spin-off because I want to know what happens. Like, I want to follow at least one of those groups that got to space and got to a planet. What happens next? I want to know. I hope there's a spin-off someday. I would love to see that. Although I did see him talk about, like, the potential for there to be, like, more like prequels, talking about how certain characters, maybe like seeing Faraday and Scythe Curie at the beginning and seeing what happened with them. I think that could be interesting too, but I really want to see them on a different planet. I don't know. I think that could be really cool. But yeah, Leslie says, I thought it was interesting how everything came full circle. Yes. I thought that was really, really well done. Like I said, I think this is the perfect trilogy. I think everything worked really well. I think everything made sense. There was nothing, I think, that happened that I found confusing or weird. I just thought it was all really great. That Anne went and took the body of Goddard after she kills him and brings Tiger back. I just, like, I wanted a happy ending for her, and she got one. And I just, like, I feel so happy about that. I thought that was great. I mean, it really tied everything up really well. But I really want to know what happens to Citra and Rowan on their new planet, because the idea that Rowan lived for, what was it, like 150 years or something, waiting for her, and then set himself back to the same age so that when she woke up, they'd be the same age. And I was just like, that's so sweet, but also like, what happens next? I want to know. I need to know what happens on their planet, because I want to hope that they make it and that there's a successful colony. Oh, but Astrid, we didn't talk about Astrid. I felt so bad for her. Poor Astrid, alone on a spaceship for like 1,000 years. Like, I just can't. That would be awful. And I don't know, the way she fought so hard for the Tonists to be able to, like, get their own minds back, and then she ends up all alone for 1,000 years, the only Tonist to get to go and be like her own self. I just thought that was depressing. I was a little bit sad for her. I don't know what happened to her, though. I can't imagine that she would be sane after 1,000 years of being alone on a ship, and the only thing she has to talk to is Cirrus. I don't know. That might not have gone so well for her. I wonder, though. But yeah, the way that the Thunderhead used all the bodies of the dead Tonists to, like, repopulate and build these colonies, and that he would give them the minds of intelligent other people so that they had the best chance of success. Like, these are the minds of, like, the greatest minds of the mortal age of humanity, of everything, and these are the people that I think will make the best choices and build the best colonies. And poor Astrid's like, but please let some of them be Tonists. But I don't know, I just thought that would be terrible for her. Yeah, I can't imagine being alone for 1,000 years. I don't know. I like to be alone sometimes, but that might be too much. So I think that's like everything I wrote down. I'm going through my notes. I'm trying to see if I missed anything, but I think we've talked about pretty much everything in the book. So why don't we discuss for a second, let me move that, I don't know what to read next month for our book. I have 3 options that I can't decide on. I'm probably going to put up a poll. So like people who didn't get to talk in this video will have a chance to decide. But I thought we could talk for a second about the 3 books I am thinking about. So I have Sarah Waters' The Little Stranger. This is, I think, a thriller, but it's like a historical fiction-y kind of thriller, and I think there might be ghosts involved. I'm not sure, but this takes place in England, and it's Dr. Faraday. That's funny. This is, I think, right after World War I and the changing society in England. So I think this is a thriller with ghosts and that sort of thing, and I really want to read more Sarah Waters, so I had that lined up as a potential. I also have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I've never read this. It's always one of those books that I really want to read. I just have never gotten around to it. And so I thought that might be fun to do as part of the book club, and we could read it together. But I don't know. I don't even know what this is about beyond it's a circus, obviously. But I've only ever heard people say glowingly good things about this, so I really want to read it sometime. And then I have Vicious by V.E. Schwab, because I follow V.E. Schwab on social media, and I think she's awesome, but I've never read any of her books. I think I own 3 of her books, and I've never read any of them. So of the ones I own, this is the one that most intrigues me. This is like a villain story, I think. It's about 2 arrogant college students who want to both be supervillains, and they fight against each other, and I don't know, it sounds really good. So those are the 3 books that I'm considering for book club reads for January. So I don't know, think about it. You don't have to decide today. I'm going to put up a poll probably next week after Christmas, and yeah, all of these are books that I really want to read, and I think most of them have nothing to do with it, but I think at least this one would work towards the Build Your Library Reading Challenge. I don't think the other 2 will, unless there's a map in one of these books, in which case that would work towards a book with a map in it, but I don't think there's a map in any of these. But yeah, no maps. So at least this one would work as a book that takes place in Europe, but the other 2 not so much. But these are all books that I really want to read, that I own and have owned for a while, and I want to read them. So I'll put up a poll probably after Christmas and see what we decide on. But those are the choices I'm leaning towards. So, but yeah, think about it and let me know what you think in a week or so when I put up the poll, and we'll decide. So I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out with me and talking about the toll. It was a lot of fun. I can't wait till next month when we can do it again. I think these live shows are just super fun. Ooh, Jill says, which site seems to give the most reliable book ratings? I think Goodreads does. I find that Goodreads, the reviews are pretty honest, at least in my opinion, of the ones that I've researched and read. That's usually my go-to. So I would recommend Goodreads. I think Amazon is definitely not reliable, because I feel like a lot of people either give really glowing reviews that they're just like sucking up to the author or whatever, or they give really stupidly bad ones, and usually the bad ones are like, this book came and it was bent or something, and it has nothing to do with the book. I really hate that. I wish it was not allowed. So many books get negative reviews for stupid things that have nothing to do with the book. So I just avoid reviews for books on Amazon entirely, and I go to Goodreads to do my book research. So yeah, go check out Goodreads for the honest reviews. Okay, so this book has ghosts, 1 star. Yeah, exactly. Like, people give stupid 1-star reviews. I don't understand it. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and wrap this up, and I will see you guys next month when we discuss whatever book we decide on reading. So thanks so much for hanging out, and I'll see you guys next time. Happy reading. Bye.